Hey, welcome into the Wednesday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley alongside Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com. He's in for Rexrode for yet another day here on the program. Nick Keyser here with you as well, intern Robert. Hope everybody's off to a fabulous start to this Wednesday morning. We got a lot to get to on the program today. A lot of Titans to get to, looking ahead to the Colts matchup coming up on Sunday. Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel will be with us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into the aftermath of Tennessee's loss to Arkansas with him. Look ahead to a big one for the Vols against Florida coming up on Saturday. So Adam Sparks will be with us a little bit later in the program. PK, how we doing? What's going on?
Good morning. Eventful day for your former quarterback who's pulling strings, don't we think?
I think so. I think you might be pulling some strings up there. I got to say, when I saw the news that Robert Saleh was fired, it wasn't really surprising to me. They're 2-3. It's the New York Jets. So it's just, one wave of dysfunction after another. And then the rumblings started to, get tossed out there that maybe Robert Saleh was considering firing Nathaniel Hackett. The offense hasn't been good. Rodgers looked awful the other day in London. And Saleh's the one that ends up paying the price yesterday, 5 weeks into the season. Pretty incredible how that place continues to just be an absolute tire fire.
They're not good, but 2-3 is hardly dead in the AFC right now. They'd be playing Monday night against the Bills for the division lead, right?
Yes.
There's no way Rodgers isn't somehow involved in this. No way. No matter what Woody Johnson says about what they did and didn't talk about. And I thought the show before us, national show, had some interesting things to say about Rodgers. Like if you put, and you've got a great seat on Rodgers being a Packers fan, but the idea that he's mentioned with Manning and mentioned with Brady is crazy to a degree if you look at what he's done for the coaches that have coached him.
Yeah.
Like he and McCarthy, not tight, right? The bad ending. He and LaFleur, bad ending. He and Saleh now a bad ending. And you look at Manning and every coach he touched, things got better for. Right? Including Adam Gase.
Yeah.
Who was terrible.
It's pretty incredible.
And you look at Brady, and he was a miracle for Bruce Arians and Todd Christensen, right? Todd Christensen, yeah. I dealt with after during him. Is not a particularly impressive guy outside of dealing with Peyton Manning. So those two guys elevated every coach they were with, and Aaron Rodgers has done the opposite. At the end, there's shrapnel. So I think that's a very big distinction between him and his two contemporaries. And now it seems to me, in late LaFleur, and now they're trying to help him with motion and things. And he's stuck in the past where he hated those things. Well, that's a lack of self-awareness that is stopping things that help an older quarterback, maybe, where he's stuck in the past.
Yeah, I think a couple of things with him are true. When you watch him play, you could still probably make the argument, and Mahomes is creeping up there, but you can make the argument he's the greatest thrower of the football of all time. You watch the guy play, and it really is unreal, like the type of throws that he can make. So from like a talent perspective, I think he does belong in some of those conversations.
Absolutely.
With Brady and Manning and all that. Everything else, there just is always needless drama with that guy. And at the end, if his career ends with one Super Bowl, I do think part of it is you're going to look back on it and you're going to say, how's that possible? Like when you have the ability that this guy has, how is it that he ends up with one Super Bowl? And some of that has been out of his control. Like he's had a couple of NFC title games where he's played great and the defense gave up 45 points and there's nothing you can do about that. But I do think a large part of it is he seems to just be really difficult to work with. And a lot of his teammates really like him and all that's fine, but there's needless drama everywhere he goes. And I think at a certain point that becomes an obstacle that is just totally unnecessary, that at times is too big to overcome at that position. And look, I haven't been impressed with Robert Saleh really from the moment he got there. I'm not sure that he's not just a total dud.
I think he's a
head coach. I think he's a good coordinator, and he was a good defensive coordinator.
And he will be again.
And I think he will be again. I think you're exactly right. But it was pretty clear, regardless of how much they wanted to dance around it the last couple of weeks here, that those two really didn't like each other. At least Rodgers didn't like him, and he ends up being the one paying the price for it. And look, the Davante Adams stuff is going to swirl up. Aaron Rodgers clearly wants Davante Adams. I still think if I had to pick a destination, that's probably the most likely place where he's going to end up. But I look at that whole organization, that whole place, and they haven't been able to get out of their own way for really the last 15, 20 years. And I just don't know that that's magically going to change now that they've fired Robert Saleh and that they have plans to bring in Davante Adams. I think their problems run a lot deeper than that. And I just don't. Also, I don't know how good he is anymore. He's 40 years old. He's coming off a torn Achilles. He's looked pretty good in a couple of games this year. And then 2 weeks in a row now, he's looked bad. So how good is he still? I don't know what the answer to that is.
The other thing, I tend not to. Well, it's so much of a team game. The Super Bowl thing, you look at Dan Marino.
Sure.
But in his case, it seems like all of this drama and these things, he has had a role in holding back some of these teams. And the stat I heard, there are 11 guys who've won multiple Super Bowls who have not gone, who've won multiple MVPs who have not gone to multiple Super Bowls. And he and Lamar Jackson are the only active guys. Now, Lamar Jackson is still got a lot of time. So, I think it's more telling with him than it would have been with a Dan Marino for sure. And it's got stuff, it's legacy telling with him. To a degree, it doesn't take away anything from his greatness. Those MVPs, he's first ballot Hall of Fame and all of that. And he's a terrific, terrific player and a unique player with the arm talent and the ability to move in his prime and all of that. But he's been, like you said, a very difficult guy to work with. And again, Brady and Manning, when things got tough, weren't saying that go trade for a wide receiver for me.
Right.
They were making things work with guys who, were less than elite oftentimes.
Well, and one thing,
finding ways, not waiting on answers to show up.
And one thing I think is fair criticism for Rodgers. I don't know that there's a great deal of taking responsibility that goes on with him.
Yeah.
Not
a raise my hand, not a my bad guy.
Right. Peyton Manning was a my bad guy. Brady.
Overly so.
Yeah.
Because when you're the top dog, you take more than your share of the blame because you're so lauded, Even McNair did that.
Well, even Rodgers sometimes will even say the right things. And you get the tone at the end of it. You're like, I'm not sure that you believe what you're saying.
Right.
I think you're just saying things to say things.
And you have to, right. If you're doing it, you have to be sincere about it.
Right.
And look, Manning and Brady, and this is a high standard we're setting, but that's the company he keeps, right? Yeah. Manning and Brady has sincerity with the way they handled themselves.
Yeah.
He's done the opposite.
No doubt about it.
I think, right? He and say what you will about the I'm immunized and all of that. Well, I'm not being political or anything, but there's a phoniness to him.
Yep.
And with all of this, the ayahuasca and the dark tent and all, it's
exhausting.
Too much, drama. Do fans want all of that? No, they want W's on Sundays.
Right.
Or you can buy yourself room with that for some of that with W's on Sundays. There haven't been enough.
No, have not been enough. And, I'm interested to see how it goes. I don't know how much is coming with that group. I really don't. I mean, they're 2-3. Like you said, it's not time to punt on the season. And look, if it continues this way,
defense.
they do. They got a very good defense. And look, I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's a
I
really
do
good
too. I
player.
do too.
I really like Brees Hall. Like I think they've got
Brees
pieces
Hall's disappointed. I mean, they need to
offensively.
get that. They need to get that going.
They do. But like they're still in the. I mean, the Bills have lost 2 games in a row. The Dolphins without Tua are not good. We know what about the Patriots. By the way, Patriots making the switch to Drake May at quarterback. So we'll see how that goes as they move forward here.
I wouldn't run to pick that guy up even in a deep fantasy.
Yeah, I probably would leave that one where it is right now as well, just to see how that goes. But that division as a whole right now, a lot of questions being answered. Look,
room.
Buffalo is still good. And I know they've lost 2 games in a row. They got run over by the Ravens.
Horrible. And the Jets, I mean, I think the Bills are a good team that's lost some tough games.
Yeah. Well, Josh Allen the other day, like we talked about it yesterday, he's 9 of 30 on Sunday. That's not very good. Like that's hard to fathom with him. But that the Jets, it is amazing. And this goes back to some of the conversations we've had talking about this team and this franchise and how when you get the moniker of just being a bad franchise, sometimes it's hard to get out of your own way. And the Jets are a bad franchise. And they've been a bad franchise for a long time, which is why they hadn't been in the playoffs since 2010 or whatever.
And that's a franchise to look at when you're talking about the Titans being a bad franchise. You should look at the Jets. I mean, the Titans are a bad franchise, but they're a middling bad franchise. The Jets are a bad franchise.
Yes, no doubt about it. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Paul Kuharski with us all day long today. We'll take your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We got the Choice is Yours coming up at 6:30. Coming up next, we'll get into the Titans evaluating what we've seen from this point to the top 2 picks of the draft for the Titans over this past year. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, Nick Keys are here with you on this Wednesday morning. Well, the choice is yours coming up here in a few minutes. I'm in the questions chair today, so we'll get into that. A lot of people concerned, PK, about your viewing habits for the Yankees tonight and wanting me to pass it along.
What are they on? Yeah. I'm like an old lady now.
Wanting me to pass along
What channel?
that it should
TBS.
be on TBS tonight.
Okay.
So keep an eye for TBS tonight for you.
By the way, I've gotten some stunningly helpful stuff about AT&T Fiber.
Have you?
I have, including an old friend from my old station who works for AT&T Fiber.
Oh, wow.
He's on the business side. He set me plans and stuff. I said, well, I think I'm going to go residential side. So he's got me in contact with the sales guy on that side. So things are going swimmingly. I put it on Facebook too. I've got a couple friends that reached out, told me it's gold. So
This has been a very productive week for you.
Yeah. Our signal is helping me. A lot of positive reviews. So if anybody got any preventative or bad stories about AT&T Fiber that I need to hear, reach out because I'm leaning heavily in that direction. Let's stick with the Jets for a minute before we get to this thing.
Yep.
If you're a Jets fan, do you want – now, this is a team that has consistently hired poorly at that job. New York seems to have a bubble around it for both its teams that prevents it from hiring. I mean, there have been some bad coaches coming through those two professional football teams.
Oh, yeah.
Jets need a home run. I would think they're going to stick with Rodgers for at least one more year after this and let the new guy, have a year with him. Do you want the young offensive guy? Now, he's probably getting Rodgers' stamp of approval. I don't know. A Bobby Slowick, a Ben Johnson, a Cliff Kingsbury, who's doing a hell of a job reviving his career in Washington right now with Jaden Daniels, who could have a go with Rodgers and then help you with your next quarterback? Or do you want a proven commodity? Vrabel's got a very popular reputation up there. Belichick has a patchy history with the Jets. He quit after a day on the job and a napkin. Aaron Glenn is the up-and-coming defensive coordinator. You have to have a home run hire for this next thing, presuming the interim is not a stayover guy, and he may be great. Where are you leaning? Young offensive or the established available guys happen to be defense?
I'm leaning young offensive. I just don't know how receptive Rodgers is going to be to that. So that's the problem. Like
if he's doing the interviews,
right? Like young offensive, I think is the way the league is going. And we talked about this when the Titans hired Brian Callahan. There's a lot of really good examples that you can point to where that's the right move. And also, I happen to really like Ben Johnson and Bobby Slowick. I think both those guys are going to be really good.
Is going to be a big prize. Now, he's asking big dollars.
He is.
All these people can afford big dollars, right? You have to be fed up and ready to go. But, I think Ben Johnson's going to be a hell of a hire.
I do, too. Now, you bring up Vrabel.
Now, I'm reading some stuff from up there, and you and I just talked about this off air. Vrabel and Rodgers is an interesting dynamic.
It is.
I think Vrabel, and listen, I'm a little Vrabel biased. I admit it. But I could picture Vrabel handling Rodgers in a way that's like they'll laugh together, but he'll also, you kind of phrased it well. What did you say?
Stop doing that crap.
Cut the bleep.
Yeah.
He can navigate that line where he's buddies with the dude, but also can snap him out of it. Or if he says, I don't like motion, he goes, listen, we're doing motion, and here's why we're doing motion, and shut the hell up about the motion. This is the last we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I do think from a respect standpoint, he would have that of Rodgers. Like,
he's got the rings.
He's got the rings. Look, Rodgers has talked about it before publicly, about how much he likes Mike Vrabel and respects Mike Vrabel. So that part of it, I think, would be the easy part. Now, one thing that would be interesting is like when things started, because at this stage of his career, I still wonder, like, how good is he? I mean, right now the picture is not that great through 5 games. Now it's 5 games, so we'll see how it continues to move along here. But if things start to get a little rocky, how does that dynamic change? Because Rodgers, when things start to go poorly, it can be a rough thing to be around, just for somebody who's watched him for a long time.
But the one thing about Sala is he appeared weak,
Yes.
and Vrabel ain't going to appear
Yeah,
weak.
it's not going to be a problem.
Now, the one thing about Vrabel is, though, his offensive coaching staff, outside of the glorious Arthur Smith years, was poor.
Hey, Downing and Keith Carter are already up there.
That's
They're right
true.
in line for him.
He's going to have to fire two guys that he inherits to upgrade. Wherever he lands, if he lands, and his name's on every list of potential hires this next cycle, he's going to have to put together a better offensive staff. If not for the owner to impress the owner, to get better offensive results.
Well, the first conversation that if I'm Vrabel, if I'm Belichick, if I'm certainly Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick, if you went that route, hey, I really appreciate that you like Nathaniel Hackett. I'm sorry, he's not our offensive coordinator anymore. It's not happening. I don't care how much you like him. You're going to have to get over that. He's not going to be our offensive coordinator, which clearly Hackett is Rodgers' guy. And I get it. They had, good history here in Green Bay. Now, LaFleur was the one calling the plays in Green Bay. But he loves Nathaniel Hackett. But if the next staff coming in, first conversation I'm having with Rodgers is, I'm glad you like Nathaniel Hackett. He's not going to be our offensive coordinator.
Right. Let's find somebody else you like that I also like.
Right. Exactly. So
and that the league might fear.
See, now you got me going. You got me thinking Vrabel. You got me going Vrabel to the Jets.
I wasn't even campaigning. I mean, I just like the idea of the dynamic with Rodgers. Rodgers needs to be brought down in terms of power. But I don't know what the contract situation is, but I'm sure they can get out of it. And, it might be time to start anew
maybe
for them.
Man, how disappointing would that be? All the excitement that they had about getting him, and then you missed the whole first year, and then the second year you fired the coach 5 games in, and if they end up not making the playoffs, and that's what it is, what a tenure.
Now, listen, on the 5 games in, I mean, Woody Johnson is checks all the boxes, eccentric owner, doesn't know the game well enough, all of that, constant mistakes and all of that. And the general response to this has been 5 games in, still very much in it, seems trigger finger-ish. But, let's take the other side for a minute. If he truly saw bad vibes, if he truly thinks his interim guy there can change the tone, and he seems like a tone changer, a bigger tone changer than a lot of interim guys wind up being, maybe he's onto something there. I hate to think it's because the head coach was going to fire the coordinator that the quarterback loves.
It needs to be more than that.
And that may well be the root of it. But even if that's the root of it, typically the firing of the head coach comes too late before you can really make a difference. This one's early enough that it can actually make a difference. So let's give it a chance and see. And maybe Woody Johnson actually did something smart.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm interested to see how it goes. Who's next? Who's the? Because I thought Peterson could be in some big trouble. Now they get the win against Indianapolis last weekend.
Yeah,
but is Peterson the next guy?
I wouldn't expect. Yeah, Peterson probably the next guy, but I don't know that it's coming
in season.
So, well, maybe it's coming in season, but it comes in season, late November, early December. Get you that head start on being able to talk to people and all of that stuff. And it's more about head starts on next season, not about trying to reset the course of your ship this year. This is a very unusual move. I mean, when you fire him this early, it begs the question, why didn't you fire him, last year and get your reset before 5 games of this season?
Yeah, which I think everybody just assumed that last year was a wash with Rodgers going down. There have been signs for a while now that Saleh may have not been cut out for that job. So I'm interested to see where that goes.
He seems like a lovely guy.
He does.
So I feel bad for him on that front. I feel bad for anybody that goes through that. But, again, New York doesn't do a good job hiring head NFL coaches.
615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll take more of your thoughts on all things NFL and the Titans. More of your internet advice for PK on our text line as well.
Yes,
we got the choice is yours. Coming up next, this is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
We all have choices to make. Like right now. It's The Choice Is Yours. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
It is that time of the week, time for The Choice Is Yours. We encourage your participation, as always, on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I'm in the questions chair. Let's get started on this. We've been talking a lot about coaching over the last 30 minutes with Robert Saleh being fired by the Jets. So all things are equal with this imaginary roster that I'm throwing out there. There's no built-in advantage. Nobody's got Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. But you can pick one person in today's NFL to coach your offense. Which person are you picking? It could be head coach. It could be offensive coordinator. But one person that can run your offense. Which guy are you picking?
I think off the top of my head, I'm going to go Kyle Shanahan. And I know the 49ers are struggling right now, but ultimately long-term build, sophistication, sensibility, long-term results. Kyle Shanahan.
Kyle Shanahan, your answer. Good one. Nick Keiser, one person to run the offense. Who are you picking?
I would have picked that one, but I'll go different. Kevin O'Connell. I really enjoy watching the Vikings offense, and obviously they have JJ, but they complement that well with how Kevin does things. So give me Kevin O'Connell.
Kevin O'Connell has been very impressive so far. There's a lot of different ways I could go with this. I mean, I kind of am tempted to go Ben Johnson. I love that guy. I'll still go Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid does some really creative stuff. I know he's got Mahomes, so there is that. But I think just by itself, there's a lot that I really like about Andy Reid and the way that he calls offense. Look, I still think McVay is really good, even though the record won't have shown it the last couple of years. I think the roster that he's had is deteriorated. And then this year you got Nakua and Kupp both hurt. So I could go him too, but I'll still go Andy Reid with that one. There's a lot of really good choices.
He's had a lot of success outside of Mahomes.
He has.
Too.
He has. And it feels like there's some wrinkle that he comes up with every year that is just ridiculous. So I'll go Andy Reid.
Yeah, and that's a good answer too, in that, everybody automatically thinks these young whippersnappers. Right. There's old guard.
That's right. All right, you can pick one member of the Titans to play up to their full potential that hasn't yet. The only caveat is it cannot be Will Levis. You cannot choose the quarterback. So one member of the Titans to play up to their full potential that we've not seen do that to this point in the regular season.
We changing the order? We're sticking with me. I
get go first.
I get the easy answers. Calvin Ridley. I mean, that's the guy that can change the look and the feel of the offense. I was tempted to say Hopkins, but I think the obvious first answer is Calvin Ridley. Gives you more of a downfield threat, more of an explosive threat, changes the coverages, softens the run defense. Not that that's been particularly difficult, but Calvin Ridley playing super well would change everything.
Nick Keiser?
Well, last week we talked a lot about him, and rightfully so, because he's not lived up to his contract. Jeffrey Simmons, quite frankly. I think this year he needs to live up to what he's being paid, and one sack through the first few games is just simply not enough. We need to see more out of him.
Yeah, both those are good. I think both those they're probably the best two answers. I was going to go Simmons. I think Simmons has got to be better. And, Herndon was on with us yesterday, PK. 2 pressures in 3 games that he's played is not anywhere close to good enough. Now, that is a defensive answer on a defensive unit that by the numbers is pretty good right now. So offense may be the way to go in this conversation. So Ridley, I think, makes a ton of sense, but I will go Jeffrey Simmons. I'd be interested to see what that, like, if it was full tilt Jeffrey Simmons with Harold Landry playing the way he is, Devondre Sweat playing the way he played last Monday night, I'd start to feel pretty good about that Titans front at that point. But right now, I just don't think he's really approached that. All right. Moving on to question number 3. You got to have 3 outs, and you can pick any pitcher in Major League history to get them. Who are you taking? It can be a starting pitcher, a reliever, a closer, whatever your answer needs to be. But you need 3 outs, and you can pick one pitcher to go get them. Which pitcher are you taking?
I've always been fascinated with Satchel Paige.
Okay.
I am going Satchel Paige.
Satchel Paige. That's a good one. That's not who I thought you were going to say.
Who'd you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going with Mariano Rivera.
He's a pretty good one. I love Mariano Rivera. I'm also haunted by Luis Gonzalez.
Yes, I could see that. Nick Keiser, do you have an answer for the 3 outs
just
you
shaking
need?
His head at baseball?
Any pitcher in Major League history. Who are you taking?
Ooh, I'll give you one that my dad taught me about a long time ago. That was his favorite. Nolan Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was on
That
the
guy
list.
could throw it. He was so good. And look, he could hit the speed too. But I mean, if I go
Walked
modern,
a lot of people.
He did
modern,
walk a lot of people.
yeah, he did. But modern
Sometimes
nowadays,
punched him. You know, in a little
Yeah.
headlock. Started giving him the old uppercut.
modern day though, Paul Skeens. He's been lighting it up too.
He's going to be really
Skeens
good.
is going to end up being really good. I mean, there's a couple different ways I could go with this. I mean, I'm thinking of a couple relievers. I mean, I wouldn't pick this guy, but if you told me that Aroldis Chapman was going to rear back and throw it 105 every time, I might go that way.
Aroldis Chapman
But,
from 8 years ago.
Yeah, you don't know where it's going to end up when he's pitching half the time too, and he's a little bit of a head case. So I'm going to avoid Aroldis Chapman in this discussion. I think I'm going Randy Johnson. I mean, Randy Johnson in his prime, I would hand the ball to him and feel pretty good about his ability to get 3 outs.
Super intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, all bird violence aside, on the mound was pretty darn good. Apparently a photographer now, PK. Shows up to random sporting events and is a pretty good photographer.
I think he does Nat Geo too.
Does he?
Yeah.
Do you following cheetahs out there and stuff? Randy Johnson?
It's always interesting when a guy who's had such a big sports career emerges in something else super legit. That's not there's no benefit to Randy Johnson as a photographer for having been a great strikeout pitcher.
We have one vote on the text line for Greg Maddux as the pitcher. You can place the ball wherever you want it to.
Yeah. Though in this situation, I think you'd like strikeouts.
I would agree. All right. Similar question. You need one hit, one clutch at bat. You can pick anyone. Who are you taking?
Rod Carew.
Rod Carew.
I was a big Rod Carew fan, though it's hard not to take Tony Gwynn.
Okay. Going Rod Carew.
I mean, Rod Carew's the kind of guy that could say, I'm going to hit it over there.
Yeah.
And hit it over there.
I'm going to give an answer that you won't like just because there were many clutch situations where he came up with some big hits. Give me the big man, Big Papi, and get David Ortiz out there. He'll get you a clutch hit.
I hate
Kuharski's just not even making eye contact with me right now.
David Ortiz with a burning fire passion.
That guy was clutch, though.
He was clutch, and he was particularly clutch against a team that wears pinch stripes.
He was. Nick Keiser, you can pick one player in Major League history. If you need one hit, one clutch at bat, who we taking?
I had to look it up just to be sure because I don't watch as much baseball as you guys do. But one name that I can't believe I forgot about him, Albert Pujols. It was someone that I used to watch growing up with my family. We used to go up and see them in action, and my stepbrother loves them.
Got to be
too.
Cardinals version.
But yeah, no, got to love Albert.
And we could take grief for not, at least I side mentioned Tony Gwynn.
You did.
But I think Tony Gwynn is
For sure
top 3 candidate there.
I would agree. Tony Gwynn's a good candidate. We got to vote for Chipper Jones on the text line.
Larry.
Ken Griffey Jr. And then
I don't know if you could take Larry, considering that Larry was in the playoffs for 18 consecutive years and won one World Series. So how many clutch hits was he getting?
There are a couple of votes for Shohei Ohtani, even though this is the first time he's been in the postseason. But, I mean, that guy is pretty unbelievable.
I mean, it gets a hit every time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's
that's a pretty good
clutch moment or not.
Pete Rose getting a vote on the text line.
You know what? Pete Rose is very interesting in reading some of the stuff in reading how modern statistical analysis looks at Pete Rose. It makes him less impressive. It makes him look like more of a stat gatherer, which is interesting to me. Obviously, he did what he did. And he's a very impressive player. And, Charlie Hustle was an insult of a nickname. Some pitcher gave it to him. Look at Charlie Hustle over there when he ran to first base hard on a walk. So they flipped that into a complimentary nickname, but it was initially intended as a derogatory.
How far down the list would you have to go to get to your boy Derek Jeter when you're needing a clutch hit?
Derek Jeter, pretty damn clutch. But I think I'd put Don Mattingly maybe ahead of him.
Okay. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Got another vote for Ricky Henderson on the text line. A lot of votes coming in on the text line. Keep them coming
good question.
All show long. We'll continue the discussion coming up next. We will get into a little postseason baseball, take a look at where things stand, where things could be heading as the divisional series are underway, and in a couple instances, just one game away from the championship series. We'll get into that coming up next as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel will be with us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into the Tennessee Volunteers with him. Big week, rivalry week starting for the Vols as they got Florida on Saturday. A week later, they got Alabama. So Florida and Alabama back-to-back. Knoxville may burn to the ground.
Remember when Florida was big challenge?
I do remember. I'm still not convinced that they won't be for them coming up on Saturday. They shouldn't be, but we'll see how that goes. A lot of baseball action that's going on right now in Major League Baseball. Last night, the Padres take down the Dodgers 6-5, which means the Padres lead that series 2-1 and are one game away from advancing to the championship series. The Mets with a win against the Phillies as well. So the Mets leading that series 2-1. So a couple of favorites on the ropes here, PK, in the National League. What do you make of the Mets and the Padres jumping ahead of the Dodgers and the Phillies?
Well, I am a Met hater, and I live with a Phillies fan, so that's bad for me on two fronts. Listen, look, I don't like the Dodgers. I don't like that the Dodgers never get grief over the money they spend, while the Yankees constantly get grief over the money they spend. And I think the Dodgers payroll is higher than the Yankees payroll.
I believe that's
this
correct.
year, and I think it's been the case for 5 years, maybe more now. But I want to see Ohtani. I think the Padres are a hell of a story. I think they're a really fun team to watch. But, Ohtani in the National League Championship Series and or the World Series would be really good for baseball. So, and I wouldn't count the Dodgers as dead yet, nor the Phillies. But it certainly feels like those two teams have something magical going on right now in San Diego and the Mets. And again, that's a downfall for the rested teams, and baseball really needs to figure this out. I don't think they have a problem, but they have a problem where the best teams from the regular season need to be rewarded, and they think it's a reward to give them this time off, and it's proving time and time again that it's not a reward, that being a hot team playing every day is far more beneficial than getting a series off. And I think they think it's great. Like, hey, look at these hot teams that are stories. And that is not, I mean, that is great to one degree, but baseball is a daily sport. Yep. It's different than other sports. And the best teams over 162 games should have even footing at the very least, if not somehow better footing than teams that sneak in at the end. I mean, the Mets did sneak in at the end. So that's exciting that the Mets sneak in at the end. And but baseball's not built for the team that sneak in at the end to have some kind of advantage. And it's an advantage to keep playing.
It is. I don't know how you fix it if you're going to keep doing these wild card series. Like, I'm interested to see what that looks like. But I'm with you. Like, if you're almost better off not being one of the top teams, so you got to stay in the wild card and play. Like, you're almost better off that way right now with the way this current setup goes. Now we'll see. I mean, the Guardians got their rest. We'll see what it looks like for the Yankees. That series is tied 1-1. So you got game 3 coming up tonight between Yankees and Royals. Game 3 tonight between the Guardians and the Tigers as well. Both those series at 1-1. So we'll see, how those teams respond to it. But I agree. It's a problem that they got to take a look at and see if they can fix it. How you feeling about game 3 tonight, Yankees-Royals?
Not great. I mean, I like Clark Schmidt, and I think he'll throw a good game, but the bats need to come alive, particularly Judge, who people say he's never done anything in the playoffs. He has done stuff in the playoffs early, but his last couple have been really bad, and he's in a bad funk right now. And the fact of the matter, Yanks have left a ton of runners on base. They need to slug. They're going to leave people on base. They need a home run or a double in there with runners on base to have a 3-run inning to support what's been reasonably good pitching. But Royals at home. Yeah, I think the series probably comes down to who breaks out of it first. Between Judge and Witt.
Yeah, I think in the other game tonight, Guardians-Tigers, I thought game 2 in that series, for a game that was 0-0 basically the whole time, was a really entertaining game. There are great defensive plays that were made on both sides, and then you finally get the 3-run homer hit in the last inning by the Tigers there to even up that series at 1. Going back home to Detroit tonight, that place is going to be bumping. I say tonight, it's happening at 2:08 in the afternoon, but that place is going to be bumping. I'm feeling good about the Tigers in this series.
Well,
I'm feeling good.
You asked if you needed 3 outs from somebody. If you kept that modern, if you kept that current Class A. Detroit to me feels like as hot as anybody, and that's this thing where you keep playing and keep playing.
Yep.
They're not as talented as Cleveland.
No.
They're the least talented team in this whole thing, but they might be the hottest.
I think they are, and I'm interested to see, can they keep that going? Because I mean, look,
Them and the Mets. I mean, the Mets are scoring more runs than anybody.
the Mets are scoring more runs than anybody. Can the Tigers keep it going? I'm with, like, in some ways that's good for the game. Like, for me, I don't have a team in the playoffs. I'm all into the Tigers. I think it's cool, the story that they're putting together right now. But we were talking about this yesterday off the air. If you had to force me to pick a matchup right now for the World Series that I want to see, it would be Yankees Dodgers. I want to see the Yankees and I want to see Ohtani in the World Series.
See, and so like I'm a big Yankees fan, right? Presuming the Yankees get past the Royals, I'd rather, I think, want the Tigers, right?
I would agree.
They're less talented
Yes.
than the Indians, than the Guardians. But do I want the Tigers? Because if the Tigers get through, that means they've been hot for 2 series.
Right.
And they're one of these teams of destiny.
And what were they, 28-11 down the stretch or whatever it
Yeah.
was?
They're 28-11, and they will have won 2 series against teams better than them. So that's dangerous to root for that team to win, to come play a 7-game series. Now, so you're rooting for them to get through and cool off. That doesn't feel good to want that.
It does
Not
not.
got to worry about this series first, but there's some danger there.
There is some danger there.
Scary. Look, all of this, which makes for a good baseball television product, but not great things for the teams that proved the best over 162 games.
TBS, True TV, and Max tonight for the matchup between
why are they on 6 channels?
I don't know.
Look, here's what I want. I want them to be whichever one of those. I want them to be on there clean. No crackling, no lagging.
Everybody stepping on a cord.
No voices that I can't hear. No, like an at bat frozen when the guy starts to swing and then comes to life as he's walking back to the dugout.
615-737-1025. We all wish good luck to Paul Kuharski's Yankees tonight in Game 3.
Very helpful.
Very popular team.
By we all, you mean none of us.
Yes. We all wish very good luck to the Yankees tonight and Kuharski. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, we will get into the Titans. We'll look ahead to the matchup against the Colts. Take your thoughts on the Titans and more. This week's Nationals Best Deal, Fog Street Lawn Club. Get half off a $30 gift card now at theGameNashville.com/deals. Dive into the ultimate rooftop experience, British lawn bowling, scrumptious bites, and premier soccer pub vibes. Get half off a $30 gift card to Fog Street Lawn Club now while supplies last. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Paul Kuharski brought to you by a Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa and Parman Energy. Visit ParmanEnergy.com, your one-stop petroleum solution. And we will go ahead and take your questions for PK, your Titans questions on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. The best question will win a $50 Moments Peace Salon and Day Spa gift card. So get those on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Titans taking on the Colts on Sunday at Nissan Stadium. We will get a little bit more into that matchup specifically coming up here in just a few minutes. PK, I do want to start with a story that's on your website, paulkuharski.com. On a recent sit-down you had with Chad Brinker, we've talked a lot about analytics, right? Analytics with the Titans. How do they help the Titans? How do they influence some of the decisions the Titans have, whether that's via the draft, in free agency? And we all know the Titans a little bit late to the game getting into the analytics discussion in the National Football League. Wasn't until a few years ago where they really got into that.
2001, John Robinson finally hired an analytics guy.
21,
he was
yeah.
low ranking. Yeah, 21, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking 3 years ago where they really got into that. So, not to give away the entire story at paulkuharski.com, but give us kind of a general sense of what you've put up on your website and your sit down with Chad Brinker.
Well, Brinker talked about, the mounds of data that they and every team have, and his determination to determine, what they do with it and how they can make it drive value. And that being, what questions do you ask of it and how do you make it effective for you in coaching, in sports science, in personnel, and with the cap.
Yep.
And so this story goes into, who the people are that are using it, what kind of things they do with it, how it kind of ties together, because the 8 people really that they have are cross-departmental and, work together. So they've got somebody in analytics who works with somebody in strength and conditioning who, work together with somebody that's in medical, that all tie together to kind of help on return to play based on testing that they've done of guys when they're healthy.
Yeah.
Looking at the testing when guys trying to work towards coming back from injury. So they're using data in terms of that. They're using salary cap data to look at how an opponent's built. I don't know that they're applying that to a game plan, certainly not. But Brinker is learning about an opponent in terms of how that opponent's built, in terms of how it spends cash, and maybe learning about them as compared to the Titans.
Yep.
That he could apply later or see like, hey, the way they're spending and what they're getting out of their team is or isn't working for them. And we can learn from that. You learn a lot here about the 2 guys that have Brian Callahan's ear during a game in terms of what they're able to tell him about a weekly meeting they have where they go over scenarios throughout the league. One guy's job is just to scour the league for tricky situations that have come up. Did they do the right thing? Given the circumstances of their timeouts and down and distance and all of that, what would we do? What should we do?
Right.
All of that kind of stuff. They're looking very closely at that. Vrabel did that too, but it was kind of him and Stretch, and they're doing more and involving more people. And I think the one big example that he gave me, or it's not a big example, but it's a tangible example, was about hand size and the ability to catch a football. The scouting instinct is, he said, when you watch a guy drop a football in scouting, a receiver, scouts will look at each other and say, well, he's got small hands. You know, that's the way why the guy drops balls. But when they went and ran the data on that, they found that it doesn't necessarily correlate. So I think you would see, like, if you're tracking the draft and seeing, oh, are the Titans going to avoid this receiver because he's got small hands? They're probably not going to avoid that. If they wind up avoiding him, it's going to be over something else, because their data has shown when they went and compared drops to small hands, it didn't correlate.
Yeah.
And so there's a showing like what they can, the dives they can do with these numbers. And so instead of just concluding based on scouting history that we see, oh, that guy he's dropping more balls because he has short hands, they're putting the numbers to it. So I think there's a lot to glean from this story, which is probably one of the longest things I've written at the site, and it's up now.
Again, you can find that at paulkuharski.com. These things are always fascinating to me, really, regardless of the sport you're talking about, but, you know, specifically now with football, because I think some people view it as, oh, well, good, they got somebody that's looking at a chart and then making every decision the Titans have based on what the chart tells them to do, and that's what they do. And that's not really what analytics is. Like, analytics, all it really is when it boils down to it, PK, is you're trying to gather as much information as humanly possible to inform your decisions. That's what it is.
And you use the word informed. That's important. He calls it data informed, not data driven.
Right.
Human decisions that are informed by data, not driven by data.
And that's the way I want it. Like, I don't want my organization making every decision just totally based on what the analytics tell you. I do think in football sometimes there's a human feel to it that you've got to, you know, you've got to let influence your decision every now and then. Like sometimes, an in-game situation is a perfect example. Sometimes you get to 4th and 3 and the chart tells you, hey, it's a good time to go for it. And then you look at what your offense has been doing all day and it's like, yeah, no, it's not. You got to alternate. But I think having as much information as you can possibly have and learning how to efficiently use that information to influence your decisions, that's a good thing. And I think the Titans are finally starting to catch up to the rest of the league in that.
Yeah. And another example, he said, you know, they've worked a long time on putting together like their major database. And this maybe sounds primitive to a lot of people. You would presume that they would have this. They did not, which shows you where they are. They now on their computers or on their phones, and it's not prettied up yet. That's the finishing touch. But if you want to look up a guy, you can find everything about the guy on one page, you know, and it's got analytics grade embedded there along with the scouting grade, say of a free agent or of a draft prospect. So he said, you know, if the analytics grade and the scouting grade don't match up, then they say, well, let's go look at this guy again and see why these two things don't, like the math and the scouting, the computer and the human elements don't align.
Yeah.
And so they'll spend extra time looking at that guy to see why not. And the human element may well overrule the, you know, it may stay that way, but they'll figure out why it's that way, which makes complete sense to me. I would think to most people. So, you know, anti-analytics people, I don't think are going to find anything very objectionable in what they're doing here. And he said all of it is, does it help us win on Sundays? If it doesn't have a practical application for what it can do for them ultimately to win on Sundays, they're not going to do it.
Well, Ed on the text line asking, is there a fear analytics will ruin the game like it has in baseball? I think it's just football is a different way of doing it than baseball is. And what I mean by that is, like, I think there's more chaos in football that's just really hard to predict analytically, right?
Controlled.
Like,
you can't
it's less
shift,
controlled.
and you can't go to the true outcomes
right
You know, I don't. And we're too far along. I think if analytics could ruin the game, it would have done it already because some of these teams have been doing this for a very, very long time. So I think the answer to that is no. And again, they'll only be, they won't be driven by it. They'll be influenced by it, and they can only be influenced by it so much. I think Stilly makes fun of Brinker's cancer cure machine or whatever it is. I think now this is a very long read for Stilly. He'll probably need to break it down into 4 or 5 sessions, and there might be some big words. But I think if he gives us a chance, it would explain some of the injury stuff.
Well, if I'm a Titans fan, and you're using this information, it's a part also of player acquisition. Like you're using it when you're drafting, when you're signing free agents. And I look at what they've done to this point, and we're going to get a little bit more into Sweat and Latham here in just a second. But like right now, those are your first 2 picks from the draft. Both of them look really good to me. Like Latham looks like he's got a chance to be a foundational type player at left tackle. Sweat, I thought was outstanding last time out against the Dolphins. We'll see how that continues to progress. And, if he continues to, do all the things he's supposed to be doing both on and off the field. But right now, both those things look really good, right? Like they went out and got Snead. I think Snead's been good to this point. Now, Woozy has not been able to be on the field. Ridley, they need more from. But, you're not going to hit on every person that you bring into your organization. But if the more information you have leads to smarter decisions in player acquisitions, ultimately your roster is going to be better over the long haul, if that's the case.
Yes. And, on the injury projection front, saying like these reports on a potential free agent will be, this guy will miss 2 to 4 games is our projection. So they're factoring in an expectation of something like that. And they've got a very thorough model of predicting for the draft. Now, how much did it help them with Sweat and Latham? I don't know, but it's some level of a factor there.
Yeah.
And those 2 and Brownlee have been very good.
615.
The rest, so far, not much.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on the analytics that we've discussed with the Titans. More coming up on the Titans versus the Colts on Sunday as well. And again, taking your questions for PK, the best question that we determine at the end of all this will win a $50 gift card to a Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason at John Bon Jovi's Nashville this Sunday for the pregame show, 9:30 to 11:30. They'll break down the Titans' Week 6 matchup against the Colts, give you the latest updates before the game. Pregame show presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home with a $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service.
How about this out of Jets camp?
Oh, boy.
This is from Connor Hughes, primary Jets reporter. He says, and this is from sources, that, and I missed this, Saleh was never going to fire Nathaniel Hackett. However, he was going to demote his game day responsibilities this week. He made the decision to give play calling to Todd Downing.
Oh, God.
Nick moaning in the background. Made the decision to give play calling to Todd Downing because of the continued issues on offense. He made that final decision Tuesday morning. Then, roughly 5 minutes later, he was called into Woody Johnson's office and fired. Based off of Jeff Ulbricht's press conference, it sounds very much like he, too, is considering giving play calling to Downing. The Jets expressed concern with Hackett this offseason in their attempts to add Arthur Smith as senior advisor. He would have been the lead offensive voice. However, he took the Steelers' offensive coordinator job instead. So, old coach or new, the Jets offense is in such shaky shape that they are thinking that Todd Downing is the answer.
Aaron, we're gonna have Todd Downing calling the plays. And then 5 minutes later, the coach gets fired. That's
Connor
unbelievable.
Hughes is on SNY TV covering the Jets and the Giants. That's
unbelievable.
really something.
5 minutes after, hey, I think.
Well, that
that
didn't even reach. I mean, Woody Johnson couldn't have known that.
I mean,
And
they acted really fast.
And his replacement is going to do it.
I think that's a good idea. Let's get Todd Downing in there calling the plays. That'll be good. Oh, boy. That place is something else. Hey, but that further even sets the stage for Vrabel.
What if Todd Downing does well?
Just lights it up.
What if in 6 weeks Rodgers is on McAfee saying, Todd Downing has resurrected my career. And we're going to the Super Bowl, baby, because Downing things are clicking.
I have never been around a play caller as dialed in as Todd Downing. Just want everybody to know that. My goodness.
God bless you, Todd. Good luck.
Hope everything goes well. That does not speak well of Nathaniel Hackett, but hope everything goes well with Todd Downing. Alex on the text line says the anti-analytics people always treat it if it's used to predict the outcome, when in reality it's used to show what the most likely outcome is based on the results of what has happened in the past.
And that's a very specific game-related analytics element.
Correct. Santa in Portland, what is Paul's opinion on how Rand spent his available dollars to improve the team from the end of last season to today? What might Paul have done differently, if anything? This is from Santa in Portland on the text line.
On paper, it looks good. In practice so far, in execution, it has not been as good. Part of that's that Calvin Ridley dropped a couple balls. Part of that, as we discussed yesterday, is that they're failing to throw the ball to Calvin Ridley with the regularity that they need to get the yardage out of Calvin Ridley that befits a guy who got $50 million guaranteed. Part of that is that Cushenberry hasn't picked up on the Bill Callahan system as quickly as you would like.
Yeah.
Part of that's that Awuzie has missed time. So a part of that is that these guys that we got all excited about in training camp, Jalen Harrell was going to make a contribution on the edge. Well, Jalen Harrell is a 7th round pick who's doing what 7th round picks do, marinating, and is a project for next year. what was the second part of that? What would I?
Is there anything you would have done differently?
Well, listen, the thing is, if I would have done something differently, I don't have a name in mind. I would have liked them to have made a move at edge. All right.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I thought that NPF would turn out okay. But if you made a move at edge, then you have to take away a move somewhere else. If you made a move at right tackle, which would have been what your third or fourth significant move on the offensive line, you would have had to take a move away somewhere else. So take away a Woozy, and then you're one thinner. Then Brownlee's a starter, and then you suffer an injury in the secondary, and then you're back to Trey Avery.
Yep.
And so, but then you're firmer maybe at right tackle, or you have a better third edge guy with Landry and Key. I don't think you can say, well, they should have also done something at the edge, and they should have also done something at right tackle. You cannot solve every problem this team had in one offseason. It's pretty impressive if you tick through the depth chart at how many. I think they have 16 new guys at their 24 main positions, adding in nickel and third wide receiver or second tight end. That's an immense amount of turnover. I think it's unfair to say, well, they should have done this and this and this also.
Chase on the text line. PK, if you're Callahan, what are you going to do to make life easier for Levis? Slow the game down. Is it more wide receiver screens, tight end screens, short pick plays? You got to start getting more yards after catch and less reads for Will Levis. This is from Chase.
I think they're screening pretty frequently, and I think teams know that they're screening pretty frequently, and I think some teams have done well to cut down their screens. So I think you need to throw more downfield to make them, not
rethink
sit on your screens. I don't know that we've seen too many pick plays and the like. That might be helpful. I mean, I think you need to call some stuff that's intermediary to deep for Ridley, and you've got to get protection there, or max protect, where you're sending him on stuff and counting on him to beat the coverage that he faces, even some potential double team stuff. He said at the beginning, there's scheme for everything.
Yep.
Let's see scheme that gets you some more chunk plays with your primary guy, that energizes your offense, and that gets production out of your big ticket guy.
I got one text that says you can't solve everything in one offseason, as if the Texans didn't just do that. The Texans had a left tackle in place. The Texans had Nico Collins in place. Like to act like they went from ground zero to where they are now in one offseason last year is not accurate. Now, they did get CJ Stroud, and when you get the quarterback, things accelerate in a hurry in the National Football League. They did bring in Dalton Schultz, who played well for them last year. Like, they made some additions that played really well for them last year, but to act like that there wasn't already something in place, and quite frankly, they had players there that were better than we thought they were heading into last season. They ended up flourishing under Bobby Slowick last year. They had some pieces in place. It wasn't like they went from absolute zero to what we saw last year. Now, the quarterback accelerates a lot of it. I understand that.
That's very, very well said. And look, their process is fast, right? All of what you said is true. It's more of a 2-year thing than a 1-year thing. And, but some places in their 2-year thing, it goes fast. Some places have a 1-year thing that goes fast. We're not saying the Titans are on the pace that they could have been on,
right?
By any means, but not every place that has a turnaround goes like Houston's turnaround's gone, and most of the places that have a turnaround like Houston's have a miracle quarterback.
Well, there's a glaring hole for the Titans' future as well. That's not the quarterback position that I'm going to get to a little bit later at 7:45 as well. But when you do find the quarterback, we know that that's the biggest accelerator in the league. Like Stroud came in and it was immediately awesome. So when that happens, that takes you from step 2 to step 6 almost immediately when you have that at the quarterback spot.
Absolutely. And the Titans do not have that.
No. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll take more of your thoughts on the Titans. Look ahead to the Titans and the Colts coming up on Sunday as well. That next, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Paul Kuharsky, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. We're taking your questions for PK on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. PK, the Colts coming up on Sunday. Big game for the Titans. Titans, if you win this game, you get to 2-3. And while that's not the most exciting thing in the world, 2-3, it does, at least for the moment, get you back in the discussion as to what can be for this team as they move ahead here. Now, we all know they've got Buffalo and Detroit coming up right after that. It is hard to envision the Titans winning either one of those games. So we very well could be looking at a best-case scenario right now through 7 weeks of game action where they're 2-5. I have no idea. But in the meantime, you do have it this week. It's a big game. We know that they're guaranteed one more big game this year when they're taking on the Colts. What do you make just on the surface of this matchup for the Titans against Indianapolis coming up on Sunday?
Well, get to 2-3 and take your chances. Richardson with the oblique. You said you thought he was pretty close last week. 16.8 yards completion. If I'm reading his stuff right. I mean, he's very dynamic, but he's got 6 picks. So, there's trouble to be had. 6.7 yards of rush. He's going to be trouble. But he's mistake prone. Let me double check this. 16.8 yards per pass completed. I mean, that can't be right. I'm reading that wrong. 60.2 rating. So, I mean, he's 4 sacks. He's a hit or miss guy.
Yep.
Flacco far steadier, hasn't thrown a pick. And you know what you're going to get out of him. He's dangerous. Taylor also has been dealing with injuries. And the Titans feel like when they stop the run, all is well. That's not always the case. But if you can be 1-0 in the division, that's another thing that would be forward progress. And the Colts have already played some division games. This will get them through one cycle of division play. And they've lost to Houston on opening day, if I'm not mistaken, and they just lost at Jacksonville. So, they lost to Houston 29-27, and they lost to Jacksonville 37-25.
Yep.
If they lose this game, you're both 2-3, and you've got a huge leg up on them in having won a head-to-head, and they've lost to the 2 other division teams, and you haven't played those teams.
Right.
So I think you can come out of this feeling really good about yourself while you're bracing for those 2 games that you talk about. Fans more so in a way than the team would be. Then you go to Buffalo and, conceivably if you stole that game and got to 3-3, you'd really be feeling terrific. But this is a very winnable game, I think. I don't think much of the Colts personnel wise, and I think the matchup is decent here for the offense to start to do some things. The Titans offensive line has been a problem, and they've faced a lot of good fronts. This front is not that kind of front. DeForest Buckner's on IR. Kwity Paye didn't play last week with a quad problem, and he's not even, a great guy. Grover Stewart, good, but hasn't turned into quite the player that it seemed like he could a couple of years ago when he was ragdolling the Titans. And there certainly isn't the wave of depth like Green Bay threw at the Titans up front. I would think the offensive line's got a better chance of pass protecting in this game, and that Will Levis has a better chance of having some time.
This is a game where you need to see something from the offense. You need to see a demonstrated step forward from the offense. And I think that's both in the running game and the passing game. This is a Colts team that has been vulnerable to the run all year long. This is a game the Titans need to be able to run the football. But to your point, I think it's also a game where they should be able to protect the quarterback to a reasonable level. And, I don't know that I'm ever going to feel good about the Titans as currently constructed, dropping back 30 times and just chucking it around the yard and being able to keep Will Levis totally clean the whole time. But in terms of the fronts that they've seen to this point, this should be a front where the offense moves the football. Now, Indy's a 1.5-point favorite on the FanDuel Sportsbook. I don't think that the Titans are like clearly the better team than Indy is, but I do think, to your point, this is a winnable game. And this is a game where you need to see progress from Brian Callahan, Will Levis, and the passing offense. You've had 2 weeks off now here. Hopefully his shoulder's ready to go. You mentioned Richardson. We'll see what the injury report looks like on Wednesday. But if it's Richardson versus Levis, like I think most of us expect it to be, this is a game where the offense needs to take a clear step forward. Need to get some production in this game.
And, they'll try to do it by establishing the run. And that's reasonable, but I hope they don't lose the idea and the commitment to being balanced. In Miami, they didn't need to be balanced because they could be run dominant in terms of run volume and in terms of controlling that game.
Yep.
I don't know that they'll be able to do that in this game. I think they can run and be balanced. And I think that's what we want to see. Let's see a well-rounded offensive game where you can run and be balanced. You also pass to set up the run a little bit. It can go both ways here. But I hope it's not a game where every first down is Tony Pollard. And in that offensive line improvement, how about no penalties?
Yeah,
let's see them not be in second and more than 10 in this game, so we don't have to hear about the lack of manageable downs, which has been an issue for them the same way it was an issue for their predecessor.
Jack on the text line. Do we prefer Richardson or Flacco in this matchup? I think you prefer Richardson. I'll say this about Richardson. Richardson has the ability to make some unbelievable plays. We've seen it already this year. He's made a couple of throws that are just outrageous. He also will throw you the ball. Like he will throw you the football at least once, probably twice throughout the course of a game. So I think right now, and first off, Flacco played great last week for them. I think by far, at the moment, if you're the Titans, you would rather see Anthony Richardson if you're trying to win the game.
I agree. You probably give up something that hurts, but you probably get something that offsets it. And at the very least, you get a wash. Hopefully, you get more than a wash. I'm not an Anthony Richardson guy. I think it's still so inexperienced. I mean, came into the league having played 17 games. He's very much like a rookie,
yep.
Despite whatever numbers next to his name on the roster and all of that. I think he's just too unpredictable to run. It's too unpredictable to run my offense. And they're probably, they're saying the same thing about Levis. They're loving the idea of Levis. They're thinking that he's going to make mistakes that kill the Titans and help the Colts. And they're not looking at the other side of that and saying, but he's going to make some throws that kill us. So, they'll take their chances with that. And Levis needs to get to the point where he's making big plays that offset his mistakes. And we're talking a lot about him minimizing the mistakes and maybe not enough about where are the plays to offset the mistakes. I'm going to ask some questions about that today.
I got a question on the text line. How do you get more from the tight end position? That's really who could open up the intermediate part of the field. They've got just 19 catches through 4 games as a group.
It's just not a tight end offense, I think. It's a 3-wide offense. So if you want more from the tight end position, you got to have less from Boyd, I think. Well,
also, how good are the Titans tight ends?
Yeah.
That's another question.
I mean, Chig is not a favored guy in this offense. Wiley is more. I think it's a, sneak one there, here and there. Here's the thing to me. A lot of people, and I'm guilty of this as well. My pet peeve is really snaps in terms of Burks. I want Burks on the field less because I think he's not threatening. Not that NWI is some major threat, but I think he's a reliable guy. But I think we need to stop saying, like, how do we get the ball to this guy? And how do we get the ball to that guy? And how do they get the ball to this guy? And focus more on a narrower group. Get the ball to your primary guys. And who are your primary guys? Ridley, number 1.
Yep.
Hopkins, number 2. Who do we want? Number 3. Pollard, to me, as handoffs for sure, and some pass touches. They talked a lot about throwing to the running backs. We're seeing it, but it's not that effective. So more effective throws to the running back. Who's your 4th?
I'd go Spears, and then I'd go Boyd 5. That would be how I would order it.
All right. So let's order it that way, and let's not emphasize 4 and 5. Let's really go top heavy. So I don't want to worry about the throws to the tight end. The throws to the tight end are to keep things honest, or because you're doing so much with these top 3 that the guys at the end are being forgotten about coverage wise. And, oh, there's Nick Vanette wide open on this play. We can throw a touchdown there or a 20-yarder to Chig or Wiley or Vanette. But I think most people would be in agreement with that. Like, let's see them establish, and I'm not saying it in terms of like royalty or pedigree or anything like that. I'm saying it in terms of danger. Calvin Ridley is the fastest guy on the team. Calvin Ridley is the fastest guy they've had in a long time. He's threatening and dangerous. Therefore, have him run threatening and dangerous routes and get the ball in his hand.
Yep.
DeAndre Hopkins has a knack for getting open. Use the knack for getting open and have Will Levis, who's proven that he can get him the ball. Pollard and Spears are shifty. Now you've got to do certain things that open up the screen game or the running back passing game. But once you do those things, give them some chances in space with the ball. Boyd, let him convert 3rd and 4 with his back, facing the quarterback with a 5-yard pass. Repeat.
Yeah, and we haven't seen anywhere near enough of that throughout the first 4 weeks. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll have the Rob Rant coming up next. Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel will be with us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into the Vols with him. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Don't make me angry.
Sometimes you have to tell someone to pound sand.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
The leash is unbelievably short with me on him right now. It's not just the lack of production that we've seen from him when they've been in there. It's the same things that continue to happen time and time and time again. I mean, we've seen it the last 2 years, what that looks like. You're not making the playoffs with that level of offensive line.
It's raining. It's raining. It's awful out here.
It is that time of the day, time for the Rob Rant here on Robby and Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program, either the Rex Rant or the Rob Rant. You know, we were talking a lot about the Titans this hour, PK. Obviously, quarterback is the main point of emphasis organizationally as they move forward that they got to get figured out, whether that's Will Levis or elsewhere. So we would all agree with that. Putting that part of the conversation aside, I'm looking around the rest of the division, really the rest of the league, but certainly the rest of the division right now, and really asking the question, how far away are the Titans? How far away are the Titans from being legitimate contenders and competitors in this division, in this conference? You know, we went through the Houston example of how quickly things changed for them. And they had some pieces in place, whether that's Laramie Tunzel at left tackle, Nico Collins at wide receiver, which I'm going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. But certainly Stroud comes in, and that's the accelerator. And you get a new coach on top of that, and D'Amico Ryans, a Bobby Slowick at offensive coordinator, and everything seems to be going really well for them. I'm looking around this division right now, and I look at Jacksonville with as poorly as they've started. I look at the skill positions, and I say, man, Brian Thomas, who they drafted in the first round this year at wide receiver, he is on pace for 1,350 yards and 10 touchdowns in his rookie season. That's a heck of a rookie season for Brian Thomas. I look at Houston and Nico Collins, and I know it took Nico Collins some time to get going, but right now through 5 games, that dude's got 32 catches for 567 yards, 3 touchdowns, coming off a year last year where he had 1,300 yards on 80 catches and was awesome in that offense. I look at Indy, and it's a little bit less the case with Indy, but you do have Adonai Mitchell, who you drafted. You got Josh Downs, 2 young guys there that have made some plays in this offense. And then I look at the Titans on the offensive side of the ball at the skill position, and I say, there's nobody there that's a young, bona fide playmaker with the exception of Tajay Spears. And right now, Tajay Spears isn't even the starting running back. Now, I know he plays a lot. I know he's plays an important role in the offense. But I look at this and I say, continuing to build out this offense beyond the obvious at quarterback, which is the priority of what they've got to get figured out. They don't have that young guy. They don't have that young threat, certainly at the wide receiver position. And I'm not sitting here trying to pile on Treylon Burks because, quite frankly, the Burks conversation just is what it is at this point. I'm with you. I'd like to see him on the field less, and he's not going to be a part of this team next year. He's just not. So that part of it is what it is. But they do not have one of those guys. There is no Nico Collins. There is no Brian Thomas. And, like, to me, for them to take that next step and to be a part of that group moving forward where they are legitimate contenders, yes, they have to figure out quarterback. But they need an up-and-coming young playmaker that right now they just don't have. And when you stack in all the different things that we still believe this team is going to need at the end of the year, right tackle being among those things. We'll see how the rest of the line continues to come together. Like right now, I still think they need like 1 or 2 at least young receivers that they're going to have to go find in the draft. So that's a long way of me saying it is very disappointing to look around the rest of this division right now and really the rest of the conference and identifying how many young, dynamic playmakers there are at some of the skill positions. And then you look at the Titans and they really don't have one. And I think it's crucial to have those guys in today's NFL.
Well, this receiving core is a 1-year deal.
Yes.
Tyler Boyd is a 1-year deal. DeAndre Hopkins' deal is up. And absolutely, they need a young receiver to be part of the mix. And so the 3 big clear needs for this team next year, right tackle, edge rusher, wide receiver. And that tackle needs to come later. It needs to come later. They spend so much draft capital on offensive linemen. Now, I know times have changed. Times have changed from when they found, Benji Olson later and Zach Pillar later.
Yeah.
And that the quality of offensive linemen coming into the league is not comparable to then. David Stewart later. But with Bill Callahan on board, one of the things they need to be able to do is find offensive line contributors outside of the first and second round, especially when the other positions you need. And they could argue, well, look, receivers, where was Thomas drafted by the Jaguars?
I think low 20s, I think, maybe late teens.
Yeah. I mean, every draft is going to be a good receiver draft from now till the end of the horizon that we can see based on how football is going. But a lot of these receivers are also, top guys, and the pass rushers are top guys, and you got to prioritize. And it's been a while since receiver. I mean, Burks was a while ago, but Burks is a bust in terms of living up to
There's no doubt
his draft status. And if you're ranking those three on the impact they can have on this football team and on the necessity based on where they've been picking people, well, it's been a long time since they did an edge guy. Harold Landry was 2018. But I'd say receiver and edge are right there, and offensive line obviously has been frequent. So you got to put that offensive lineman, as important as he is, and say, we've got to find him later and put those other two higher. And I would say the first two needs of this team are a dynamic playmaking wide receiver, and you might put that highest because he's touching the ball, and an edge rusher who can cause some havoc are the top two for me. And not that this right tackle isn't very important, but again, this is a team with three really big needs heading into next year. And maybe you can do damage at one of those positions in free agency, though those are three very high value positions. So they don't generally get to free agency unless a team just simply has cap problems and can't afford to retain a guy, or B, something's wrong with him.
No doubt. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel will be with us coming up next. We'll look ahead to Tennessee and Florida coming up with him. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. Tennessee hosting Florida coming up on Saturday at Neyland Stadium. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel. Adam, good morning. How you doing?
Pretty good, guys. The sun came out in Arkansas the other day. It's come out every day since then. Although if you walk around Knoxville right now, you may think it hasn't. But they have another game to play this week.
They do. There's no doubt about that. And within a 7-day span, taking on Florida and Alabama. So we'll see how that goes. The city may burn down at the end of that. Let's start on the Arkansas game. Obviously, it's an incredibly disappointing result for Tennessee. The offense just could not get anything going. Defense, even though they only gave up 19 points, it was just tough on them to stop Arkansas's offense that night. So I want to start on the passing game, Adam. What's your concern level with what we're seeing, or maybe more specifically what we're not seeing from the passing game right now, whether that's from a protection standpoint and execution down the field? What do you make of the lack of production right now in the passing game?
For one, I think things were a little too easy early on. If you go back and look at the Chattanooga game, the Kent State game, those blowouts, Nico sat in a clean pocket. He threw the ball downfield. They could, because of the opponents they were playing, you could have slow developing deep routes. They would, throw in a whole lot of deep slants, 17, 18-yard square ends, these sort of things. And they don't have the pass protection to do that. And also, I think Nico saw how easy that was. And once he got into a game where those just weren't there, he would not look to check downs. I don't think so much of this shows in the TV broadcast, but live from the press box, you would see a few intermediate routes that were open for a split second. Nico did not look at them. He looks deep. That's where he's had success early in the season. They're going to have to drill into him to settle for a 6-yard pass to a running back or an 8-yard pass to a tight end or whatever. That's some of it. The biggest part of it is just protection. There was Nico was confused by what he was seeing. This is 2 games in a row they've been bad on offense, and both of them, Oklahoma and Arkansas, introduced new defenses, 3-man fronts, which they had not shown on film. Nico's been confused by them. It's not something he had, seen in high school. You're a 5-star guy, but you don't see that necessarily. You don't see complex defenses. They've disguised a whole lot pre-snap. Opponents have looked at Nico and thought that is 5-star talent, but the vulnerability that he has is his inexperience. And so they've done a good job of disguising things pre-snap, and his offensive line has not helped him, and especially both tackles. So it's a little bit of everything. I think offensive line is the biggest issue, but I put more of this in retrospect on the coaches because they should know what Nico can and can't do at this point, and they should know where their vulnerabilities are on the offensive line. And they just didn't do anything in the game the other night to help either of those problems.
Where do you think the biggest adjustment is called for by them, and what do you expect the adjustment to be now?
2 tight ends. They have 3 good tight ends. In the NC State game, they went to a 12 personnel to run it back and 2 tight ends, and that worked very well. So Josh Heupel has shown in that game, and the fact that he was pretty conservative in the Oklahoma game, that he doesn't mind getting outside of his primary philosophy. His philosophy is spread everybody out, throw to the sidelines, and then use that space to run the ball against a light box. And because of the confusion that's going on in the pre-snap disguises, the box has not been clear how many players are in the box, how many defenders are in the box. So they need to just simplify it, go with 2 tight ends, run the ball. It's what they can. It's the simplest game plan right now. I think it's the easiest on Nico. It gives him fewer reads, things closer to the line of scrimmage. It doesn't take advantage of his arm strength, but you just need to win games at this point. And the one guy they can count on is Dylan Sampson. Light box, heavy box, whatever. He's averaging over 6 yards a carry. He's averaging over 10 yards a catch. Just get him the ball a whole lot, and and keep things tight in the middle of the field.
Adam, do you think the receivers are doing a good enough job of creating separation? How would you evaluate the way that they've played? And do you think there's a chance that just given the raw ability that he has, that Mike Matthews finds his way more into the conversation at some point?
I mean, Matthews could. A lot of people, I mean, this is one of those people get in love with that 5-star grade, and he's a very good receiver. I think we'll see more of him this week because I'm a little skeptical that Brew McCoy and Squirrel White will be able to go. They both had pretty nasty injuries the other night. Even if they do go, they may be limited. I mean, Matthews played 14 snaps the other night, and I don't know that he ever got open, but he never was targeted, and I think he would have been if he was open. I mean, a lot of the wide receivers had some issues. I mean, I even said it in the preseason. This wide receiving core is maybe the deepest that Josh Heupel's had, but like there's not a number one. There's some number twos and some number threes. So I don't think there's necessarily a receiver that just terrifies opponents. It's more so the scheme does, and if there's space, they'll exploit it. But they just haven't had space, and I think defenses have been perfectly fine with giving up underneath routes because of that, because they don't think there's receivers necessarily that can just beat them on one-on-ones, and so far that's been the case.
So in the transfer portal era, Tennessee hasn't really become a destination for wide receivers. They're not special to position, like you just said, despite the attractive offenses. So what's the deal with that?
Well, I mean, so like Dante Thornton he's had a number of big plays. He's been their most productive guy, averaging 30-something yards a catch, 3 touchdowns. He just hadn't done it that much. He's a guy that they got in the portal a year ago out of Oregon. Looked like he'd flamed out. Instead, he's had a good second year. Chris Brazzell, the Tulane transfer they got this year, has not really hit yet. So I think there's an argument that maybe it takes more than a year, especially in this offense. I think Tennessee it can sometimes be a draw on offense to transfers because it's very productive. Transfers look at that and say, I want to be a part of it. But then once they get in it, the tempo is difficult. The offense is a hard adjustment. I mean, even if you look on the offensive line, their two biggest issues in the offensive line are their left tackle and the right tackle. They're both transfers, especially the left tackle. LSU transfer, Lance Hurd, 5-star. He left LSU because there are 2 NFL tackles in front of him, so he couldn't get on the field, and came here. And the tempo is tough to adjust to. He was out of shape because he's been injured and out for about a month, and it's just hard to catch up in that way. So Tennessee's been pretty good at getting players into the portal, but few of them have hit immediately. It usually takes time.
Adam, on the defensive side of things, was Saturday night maybe a wake-up call for the secondary? Did you feel like they got exposed a little bit? How did you view how those guys played and what that could mean for them moving forward?
Yeah, not necessarily. I have heard since then sort of the revisionist, well, the offense is bad, but the defense wasn't good. The defense gave up 19 points. They got no help from their offense. They were put in some 3rd and short and 4th and short situations and were really good in those. They gave up one long drive at the end of the game. Now, they shouldn't have done that, especially against the backup quarterback. But I just don't lay any of this on the defense. You're going to have a few hiccups every game, and Tennessee's defense has played like a national championship defense. Its offense has gotten nowhere near that, especially against good competition. If the offense can figure things out, then this is a playoff team. But I don't think any of that hinges on how the defense has been.
So, Adam, to that point, you got the Florida game coming up on Saturday. Florida is all sorts of in a mess right now, and they did get a nice win this past weekend. But Billy Napier is firmly in the crosshairs with that team. What do you make of that matchup and, the chances of Tennessee, they're 15.5-point favorites. Do you think this actually could be a significant blowout for Tennessee on Saturday?
I don't know that it'll be a blowout. I mean, I think that line is probably about right. That's probably where I would pick it, a couple of scores. It's funny how the last couple of weeks now the pressure of this game has flipped. because the question was, is Billy Napier even going to get to Knoxville?
Right.
Like, is he going to be fired before that, or is he going to be fired after he loses to Tennessee? Now it's, the sense you get out of Gainesville is, we'll just see how it goes. We may still fire him, probably still, but let's just let it play out. It's fine. And from Tennessee standpoint, the sense is more of, Tennessee fans are always going to be nervous of the Florida game. They just kind of need a reason. They don't need a reason, but if you can give them one, they'll feel even more trepidation. And now that the offense is bad, now a lot of fans around Knoxville are thinking, well, this is it. This is what goes wrong. The offense isn't good. We thought it'd be great, but it's not good. And so Florida's going to take advantage of that. I don't think so. I think the offense will be fine. I think they'll fix enough issues. They'll find a game plan that works. Florida, before last week, their defense is pretty good against UCF, but their 2 SEC games before that, they were giving up like 250, 300 yards rushing. So that's all Tennessee needs to do. Just run the ball, and they'll win this game by a couple of scores, as long as they don't turn it over. But, if I would not put Tennessee in the playoff right now, I think they're one of those first few teams out. If they beat Florida and beat Alabama, then they're in. I think they can win out and be in at that point. But they got to win this one, and then beating Alabama, I think, would get them in. Wouldn't necessarily take them out if they lost, but they need to win these next two for sure.
What if they beat Florida and they don't beat Alabama?
I mean, then you've got to win out, and you got to win in Athens, which Georgia looks more vulnerable than they have. But just beating Kirby Smart in mid-November at his home field. That's a tough ask of your team. I think Alabama is the game that you've got to win. You'd be in Neyland. Alabama, obviously, we saw last Saturday, is beatable. So you got to take care of it then, and then try to get to the finish line.
So you win one of those two, Georgia, Alabama, and you win everything else. You think they're solid? Two-loss playoff team.
I think so, because Oklahoma is looking a little better at this point, so that's going to be a top 25 win. I think will hold up if you beat Alabama or Georgia. You've got what would probably be a top 10 win. Now Alabama could fall off a cliff, and that doesn't look as good. But I think in the SEC you're going to have a handful of 9-3 and 10-2 teams, and I think a 10-2 Tennessee probably gets in. I mean, the eye test also would help. If they do finish 10-2, then the offense is going to look better and closer to what we thought, and the defense is still going to be one of the best in the country. So I do think that panel would look at that and say, well, this is a national title contender at 10-2.
Adam, great stuff, man. As always, appreciate you taking time to be with us, and should be a fun one coming up on Saturday at Neyland. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
All right, guys. Good to be on.
Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel, our guest on Robby and Rexrode. We'll react to what Adam had to say. Got more of your questions on the Titans to get to as well on our text line. We'll do all that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville tomorrow for MTSU football. Blue Raiders taking on Louisiana Tech on the road. Pregame at 5:30, kickoff at 7 o'clock. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville, presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. Appreciate Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel for being with us.
That voice, you
love that
you have
guy.
a special affection for Sparks' voice.
Josh Heupel, Squirrel White.
I don't know what just happened, but an Arctic wind just blew through here that made me want
I'm convinced Chase is trying
not
to kill
just
us.
pants, but like snow pants.
Yeah, I mean, it's freaking ridiculous in here. It's unbelievably cold.
But
It can never be comfortable.
It's an up and down cold. It like keeps you on your toes. There are times you're tempted to take off the sweatshirt, and then there are times like now that you're like, why did I only bring a sweatshirt?
Yeah, like you need just a parka in here. It's unbelievable. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning.
Well, let's see, man. Packers are trash. Yankees are trash. I'm trying to think of everything that can warm you guys up, man.
Oh, thank you.
Do my best over here. So here's my thing with this, Robby, is that I don't think the Vols are necessarily, like, different than I thought they were going to be to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, that they had this reputation because Heupel's offense is so fast that it was going to be super explosive. But Brew McCoy is their best receiver, man. And that's not a knock to Brew because I think he's okay, but he's not scaring anybody. Like, I just feel like they're kind of locked to their run game, right? And if somebody out physicals you, then you're done, you know? And they held the ball almost the whole game, Arkansas did. So it just is what it is. If this was in Gainesville, I would feel really worried about the Vols going and playing this game. And it's not. I think they're going to take care of business. Maybe they'll get better, but I just feel like this offense was overrated the whole time. And I love them, man. I wish they weren't. But I feel like everybody thought they were going to be a lot better than what I actually thought they were.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Adam.
Isn't the story of this game, though, that Florida's really bad?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Florida's bad. There's no doubt about that. If Tennessee plays anywhere near their capability, they should win this game by multiple scores. I mean, they should win the game by multiple scores. Now, I know that there's going to be some Vols fans that are just scared to death walking into Neyland Stadium on Saturday, given the history of that rivalry, and I understand it. But they should be able, Adam pointed out, they ought to run the ball like crazy in this game. This should be a Dylan Sampson type of game. I will say they have to find a way to get better throwing the ball. And how much of that's on Nico, I don't know. How much of that's on the coaching staff? You got to find a way to get the ball in the hands of some of your playmakers over the middle of the field more often than they will. I think Adam's exactly right. There's going to be, I think, a lot more two tight end sets on Saturday. And they used that in the NC State game. They looked good doing it. It's not typically been something that they've done in Josh Heupel's offense. I think they've got the personnel to do that a little bit more often. Now, at some point, you're going to have to be able to throw the ball on some of these seam routes and down the field over the middle against the Alabamas and the Georgias. You're going to have to make big plays down the field. I don't know if you necessarily have to do that in this game, but the offense throwing the football, look, the Nico kid, he's got all the talent in the world. Like he's got a big-time NFL arm right now. I think he's going to be a really, really, really good player. But to Adam's point in the last segment, I do think there are some things right now that he's just not seeing in the offense that he's got to start to see in a hurry.
Well, if you simplify early in this game and play the way they should, and maybe you get yourself in a situation where you can then try some things to get in to where you need to be for those games later. Get some looks at least where you can get some things on film for yourself to say, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, here's what we're trying to do if you're up 3 scores late,
Well, I disagree with Sparks a little bit too on the defensive side of things. I did not think it was a good defensive performance on Saturday. And I understand they only gave up 19 points. And anytime you give up 19 points, you should win the game, especially in today's college football with scoring being what it is. So I understand that. Now, Arkansas did short arm a touchdown pass. They missed a field goal. They got stopped a couple times on 4th down. One of those was by their receiver catching the ball with his knee on the ground and would have picked up the first down
God,
otherwise.
I hate that rule.
So,
I
yeah,
hate that rule.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Like, I'd rather see it how it is in the pros. But, so, yes, they only gave up 19 points. They were aided a couple of times, particularly in the first half, by Arkansas just shooting themselves directly in the foot. I did not think it was up to their standard of defense, certainly that they've had to this point. So that part of it's got to get back to being what it's been all year long. I don't really worry about that. I still think, we've seen enough from that defense where we know this. They're 12 deep up front. We'll see what the Eason injury looks like. Josh Heupel did say yesterday that none of the guys that got hurt Saturday night are feared to be long term. Now, does that mean they're available this week against Florida, next week against Alabama? I don't know. We'll have to see what the injury report looks like later this week. But they're deep enough on the defensive front where I feel good about the defense kind of having a bounce back performance here. Offensively, though, I agree. Like, if they get the offense, particularly the passing game, figured out, I still think this has a good chance to be a playoff team. If they don't, then you may be looking at more losses other than Alabama and Georgia if you can't get the passing part of it figured out for Tennessee.
Yeah. And, one bad day doesn't undo everything, even if it exposes some things. Not everybody's going to be able to do what Arkansas did the way Arkansas did it. The atmosphere is not always, yeah.
Well, they came out
It
flat,
was
too.
your worst fear,
Yeah.
right? But it doesn't mean that your worst fear comes to fruition.
Well, and one
they
thing
came out flat. They're going to come out flat against Georgia. They're going to come out flat against Alabama. You certainly
not.
hope that they're more mature and better prepared and ready based on coaching and personal pride and all of those things those weeks.
And those are things the next 2 weeks specifically that should not be a problem. Number one, you're at home. So, yeah, first off, you haven't been home in about a month if you're Tennessee. You're home against Florida in a game, in a series where for the last 25 years, and not that this has a direct correlation to the field Saturday, but like your fan base wants this one bad. And they want some retribution for what has been just a terrible series for them the last 20 years. And then there's Alabama the next week. These are your two biggest rivals back to back. Like, the energy and the juice should not really be a problem for them the next couple weeks. We'll see what that looks like, what that translates to once they get actually on the football field. We'll get back into the Titans coming up next. We will award a winner for our $50 Moments Peace Salon and Day Spa gift card as well. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan this Saturday for Vanderbilt football. Commodores taking on Kentucky with pregame beginning at 5 o'clock. Kickoff at 6:45. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at thegamenashville.com. Robby and Rexrode here with you on this Wednesday morning. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Paul Kuharski with us. We have a winner in our $50 Moments Peace Salon and Day Spa gift card for the best question for PK, which we did earlier in the program. Chase on the text line, who is either from White Bluff or his last name is White Bluff, and I don't know which one.
I like to think that his last name is White Bluff.
That's what we're going to go with. Chase White Bluff on the text line. If you're Callahan, and what are you going to do to make life easier for Levis, slow the game down, more screens, tight end screens, pick plays, got to start getting yards after catch, less reach for Levis. We talked about that in the last segment. It is going to be interesting offensively to see what sort of adjustments that they make coming out of the bye week here against Indianapolis. We talked about the matchup earlier. This on paper looks like a matchup where you should be able to move the ball if you're the Titans. If you can't move the ball against this team, that's going to be pretty concerning about what you've got coming up down the pike if you're the Titans after that. So I am hopeful that we're going to see the best performance from the Titans offense that we've seen in some time on Sunday against Indianapolis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the first game as a fan that you would go in feeling good, like from the jump, that the Titans offense should do some favorable things. Keyed by the run game. And I think, we talked about how real the run game success was in Miami, but I think, they feel good about it, and like it's a place they can pick up from and go with. And so I would expect it. I think there are some things that could get going too. Like Spears hasn't really had a chance to get going, which I think it's complicated because Pollard's been good and Pollard deserves the bulk, but there's a way to complement him with Spears that they haven't quite figured out. And I think this would be a game for that, to find the right combination of the two of them. So I think they'll be striving to do that, and I think everything can build from there. Ideally, you'd like to be in some second and short that would give you some options. That would be a thing that could really help Ridley. If you're in a 2nd and 3, if you're in a 2nd and 2.
Take some more shots. Yep.
Yeah, that would enable you to throw some of the kind of balls that you and I think everybody are wishing we could see with Ridley.
Speaking of running the ball, so Derrick Henry, we talked about him yesterday. He surpassed the 10,000-yard mark. He's playing great for Baltimore right now. He's got 572 rushing yards in 5 games. He's on pace for right around 1,900 yards right now in Baltimore. And Stilly was talking yesterday about how maybe the Titans thought that he was quote-unquote done maybe a little bit too soon before he was. Washed before he was. I've got my take on this whole Derrick Henry thing. I'm interested to hear yours first and your thoughts on Derrick Henry. Did the Titans quote-unquote give up on him too soon? How do you view that whole thing with how successful he's been in Baltimore?
I think mine's going to be similar to yours. Stilly boy seems to think the Titans had a right of first refusal on this deal, or that $1 million more would have made the difference for Derrick Henry. I mean, Derrick Henry gave a goodbye speech at Nissan Stadium after his last game there.
He did.
Do we think that's because the Titans told him, the Titans didn't have control of Derrick Henry? Free agency. And listen to the first word of free agency. He is free to shop himself. That was the first time he was free to do what he wanted to do. So, it seemed like a foregone conclusion on both sides, but couldn't that have been, and I say this sarcastically, couldn't that have been a foregone conclusion because Derrick was intending to go somewhere else? Especially once Vrabel was fired, then there was a new coach coming in that didn't favor that style of running back. I think even if the Titans had approached him and did want him back, he could have fairly said, this is no longer a great fit for me here. And I'd like to go somewhere different. And, it seemed like there had always been a little bit of intrigue about Baltimore. Baltimore is the team that had inquired during the trading time. Dallas is where he trains in the offseason, and the Cowboys seem like that was a potential as well. But I think it was at the very least a mutual separation. And could Derrick Henry be helping the Titans win games now? For sure. But at some point, an organization turns a page. And to make the judgment right now, after 5 games of Derrick Henry being gone, on what would have had to have been a 2-year contract, I think is a little foolhardy. After 2 years, we can assess it. But also, they probably couldn't have gotten him.
Well, that's the thing. Like I said it the day that he left, and it was official that he was going to Baltimore. Like, there's this idea that Derrick Henry was like waiting in the wings for a contract offer for the Titans, and that had the Titans given him any sort of like reasonable offer, he would have signed it and said, "Yep, all right, I'm coming back." And I just don't believe that to be the case. Now, I have no idea, last offseason, what conversations were like between Rand Carthon and Derrick Henry in terms of, contract negotiations, him staying here, what Derrick Henry was looking for, all that. We do know that Baltimore tried to get him last year at the trade deadline. It came really close, and Derrick Henry went on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast and said, "Yeah, it was pretty darn close for me getting traded last year." So we know that there was at least conversations at the deadline last year where he was almost dealt. So had the Titans already made up their mind at that point? It kind of looks like they had. Now, how much of that was the Titans and how much of that was Derrick Henry just saying, "Yeah, I'm going to be going to free agency, guys"? So I don't know what the breakdown of that is. But just looking at it reasonably at the end of the year, you had gotten to the end of the year, you had fired the head coach that he had played for the majority of his career, and you're going with a young quarterback and revamping the entire offense under a new head coach. There's a lot of reason for Derrick Henry to look at this situation and to say, "You know what? I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of sense for me to be here anymore. Oh, by the way, I'd like to win. And I don't know how close this team is to winning." And there's no doubt about it that the Baltimore Ravens are infinitely closer to winning a Super Bowl right now than the Tennessee Titans are.
And by the way, back to that trade, like I don't think they got offered enough value, and ultimately that's why they decided. But Chad Brinker, in this analytics piece I wrote today, said they need to get to a place where they've got 8, 9, 10 draft picks a year.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get to 8, 9, 10 draft picks a year by not trading Derrick Henry in that situation. And for the record, if they do finish very poorly this year in range of a quarterback, I think you do get in the range of 8, 9, 10 draft picks. If you can have other teams be in love with quarterbacks in this draft, which is not a great quarterback draft, you can finally turn the tables on your draft pick numbers by not taking a quarterback in this draft and dealing to somebody that will.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's only for a year, and next year, if you're not bad again, you need to package to go up to get one of those quarterbacks that's coveted. Maybe you can't get up there because two bad teams are just going to take those 2 guys. But the Titans want big draft classes. And that's interesting because the Titans, in Rand Carthon's 2 years of running the draft, have not made a trade back.
No, they have not, and they've also given up assets, right? Like, they make the L'Jarius Sneed trade, so you're bringing one in, but you're also giving up draft capital when you do that. I mean, Caleb on the text line says, "I do know whatever was involved in that deal for Henry is more than what we got when he left for nothing in the offseason. But let Rand cook, baby." This is from Caleb.
Very fair.
On the text line. Dylan says, "In my opinion, I don't think it was really about the money for Henry. I think since he's toward the end of his career, he wanted to go to a playoff caliber team, try to reach a Super Bowl, yada, 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 all those things." My question is, the way he's playing right now, is he toward the end of his career? I mean, he's 30. He's starting to get up there for running backs. Right now he's on pace for 1,900 yards.
He's a supernatural guy, all right? But even supernatural guys, every time you convince yourself a supernatural guy isn't going to hit the wall, he also hits the wall.
Yep.
So there will come a time for Derrick Henry where he will hit a wall. And the Titans, if they had a choice in it, chose to be out too early instead of too late, which is not unreasonable thinking. What the Titans need to do here is get Pollard and Spears. And this is another ridiculous thing Stilly was doing, was comparing Pollard straight up to Henry when you need to compare Pollard plus Spears straight up to Henry. Now I know, and you can't compare Baltimore's rushing numbers to the Titans' rushing numbers because Baltimore has Lamar Jackson,
Correct,
who runs at a ridiculous rate compared. So here's a thing that called for nuance, and shockingly, none was offered.
615-737-1025. Our phone number 615-737-1025. We got a lot of your thoughts coming in on our text line. Keep them coming. We'll get to more of those coming up next. Looking ahead to the Titans and the Colts coming up this weekend as well. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away. A pair of tickets to see Deftones at Bridgestone Arena coming up on March 26th. Caller 9, 615-737-1025.
Yeah, 9.
615-737-1025. Caller number 9 will win a pair of tickets to Deftones at Bridgestone Arena coming up on March the 26th. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. The Titans and the Colts coming up on Sunday at Nissan Stadium. Opportunity for the Titans to get to 2-3. We'll also see what the availability / impact looks like for Jeffrey Simmons on Sunday. We talked about players earlier in our Choice is Yours question of if you could pick somebody outside of the quarterback to play up to their potential to this point, who would it be? You're going Ridley. I went with Jeffrey Simmons. Either one, I think Titans fans would take right now. You'd love to have both, but I think Simmons getting after the quarterback. You mentioned the lack of depth at edge rusher. It's Harold Landry and then basically everybody else. If you could get some pass rush from him up the middle, that would be very helpful. Talk about two different situations, though. Like one, if it's Flacco, you're talking about more of a statue. And if it's Richardson, you better be careful with the way you're rushing him because he can hurt you with his legs just as much as he can your arms.
Yeah, and you could expect a week full of how do you prepare for two quarterback questions, which is pretty standard answer. We'll prepare and be ready for whoever's at quarterback. Simmons, the way that Callahan talked about this is, we were advised that rest would help it significantly, and with the bye week there, that's why we held him out of the last game. So he didn't play in Miami, which gave him, a full 2 weeks off before this game.
Yep.
And we think he'll be good to go. Now, Jeff said it's not the full like Tommy John tear, but it's like the pending Tommy John tear. It's hard to imagine that it won't affect his arm movement. He's going to wear a big, more than a brace. What do you call that?
Like an arm cast almost. Yeah.
Yeah. A hinge, maybe you would call it. But we'll see what that does to his ability to grab and pull and swipe and all of those things. But maybe he's had a chance also to mentally reset here. And get in gear. It would be great to see a very impactful Jeff Simmons going forward. He needs to be a more impactful player. It wasn't as if they missed him horribly against Miami, substituting with Coburn, who's going to miss some games now with his own injury, a knee, I believe. James Lynch, Abdullah, who filled in. That's a trio of relative no names certainly compared to Jeffrey Simmons. Tavondre Sweat played very well without him. But you want to be at full strength and you want to get going. You want to push the pocket. If it's Flacco, like you said, that's a statue guy that pushing the pocket would be very effective on. If it's Richardson, it's going to be more of a cage rush, where you try to pin him in there and maybe let secondary guys see if you can't get him to the ground, or it's going to be more about like forcing him into a mistake because he's got some guys in his face or moving him off his spot. But, forcing him into mistakes be just as good as getting him to the ground. This is a guy that really can get flustered or do dumb stuff. In a lot of ways, them going at Anthony Richardson is like defenses have felt going at Will Levis.
One other thing, keep an eye on this week outside of just Anthony Richardson for the Colts. Jonathan Taylor did not play last week against Jacksonville. He's dealing with a right ankle injury. It looks like he's got a chance to be back this week for Indy. So I would expect both of those guys probably to be available. Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. Shane Steichen said earlier this week, quote, they're doing well. We'll see how the week goes, but they're both feeling really good. We'll see how the week progresses. The injury report will come out later today. We'll kind of get our first glimpse into that. But Jonathan Taylor dealing with the ankle. I would guess he'll be back. And that's always key number one to slowing down the Colts offense, is slowing him down. We said it earlier, like if Richardson's in there, he's got a huge arm. He'll make some big plays. He'll also probably throw you a couple. And when he does, if you're the Titans, you got to make sure you take advantage of those and force some actual turnovers,
And
which they've not done much
They're
of.
not above getting run on by somebody like Trey Sermon.
They are not.
I'm forgetting the guy who corkscrewed a overtime game-winning touchdown against them at Nissan Stadium, ran to the pylon in the corner, dove and spun. But he was no starting running back. I should know him because I was covering the division at the time.
They had Zach Moss last year, wasn't it?
And Zach Moss last year, and they were talking about how Zach Moss last year reminded them of
Le'Veon
Bell. As if that made things better, that you're comparing him to a guy who at his peak was an elite back. No, he was not Le'Veon Bell. He was Zach Moss.
God, I forgot about that.
Do not want to. There's your worst case scenario on Monday is that they're comparing Trey Sermon to
he really reminded me of Edgerrin James.
Yeah.
To Edgerrin James is something else. Trey Sermon, very similar out there. I will say, PK, you've got me thinking about it all show now.
Vic, the guy I'm thinking of, the running back, his first name I think was Vic.
Was Vic? I'm not coming up with anything.
Vic Ballard?
Sure. That sounds good.
I'm looking up Vic Ballard.
You got me thinking about now what the first possible play call could be when Todd Downing takes over calling plays this week for the Jets. I'm very much looking forward to it.
I'm pretty sure it was Vic Ballard. He
Okay.
played for the Colts.
Okay. All right.
That's a good pull for me because I'm
That
not a memory guy.
That is a very good pull for you. So Todd Downing going to be apparently the new play caller.
Is that
for
set?
New York. It hadn't been said yet, but if everybody else is thinking about it, and even the new coach is thinking about it, I think we're going to get there. I think we could see some Todd Downing play calling going on. And I, for one, am excited.
Look, Woody Johnson's given his new coach power and his new coach. What McAfee has to ask Rodgers how he feels about this move.
That's happening today.
Yeah. So what is Rodgers feeling about Hackett's demotion?
I'm sure he'll say all the right things when it comes to Saleh.
Yeah, what's the facial expression?
Hackett, I think he's got a chance to be like, he'll double down on like Hackett knows what he's doing. Hackett's not the problem. Like he's, for whatever reason, he loves him some Nathaniel Hackett. Loves that guy. He'll be all in on Hackett.
I just look, you can love the guy personally and everything, but what happens to the production and effectiveness being the main concern?
Yeah.
I don't understand. He's just so weird.
I don't get it. But I mean, look, they're 2-3. If they lose this game to Buffalo and they drop to 2-4, first off, the Devontae Adams stuff, like, are you really mortgaging? You gonna give up a second round pick or a third round pick for Devontae Adams when you're 2-4?
No. What was the peak of your Aaron Rodgers affection?
I mean, there was a pretty good stretch there. I mean, when he won back-to-back MVPs, probably at the top.
Absolute love.
Yeah, loved him.
And how far has it fallen?
Oh, well, I'll say I still will always hold love for him, which is based on the way that he played. He is so exhausting that every time Jordan Love says nothing all the time, I'm like, keep it up, bud. Keep it going. Just don't say a word. Just play football. That's all I need you to do.
And now we're listening to Rodgers and watching him makes you cringe?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like you remember the good old days, but
glad it's not my problem anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's how I view it. PK, thanks again. We'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it back tomorrow.
Enjoyed it. Don't block the box out there, but be sure to lock your locks.
Chasing Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3, The Game.